What does it even take to make a difference? I'm only one person. What can I do? The problems of this world are insurmountable and there's nothing we can do about it. How many of you have heard somebody say something like this recently? How many of you have felt like this yourself recently? I think given all that we've faced in the last year and a half, if someone claims that they've never felt that way, they're probably either lying or asleep. But here's the good news. Just a tiny little reminder. Everything matters. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Everything matters. And therefore, everyone can make a difference. I'm going to say some things in this presentation that it may sound pompous at times or like I'm tooting my own horn. I want to apologize in advance, and I would like each of you to know that I actually don't feel like I'm a better person than anyone else. What I share, I feel that I can say because I've lived on the other side. Hi, my name is BC, Brian DiCiacco. I'm an author, speaker, podcaster, artist, and the founder of the nonprofit A World Empowered. Several years ago now, I made the decision to dedicate my life to helping people who like helping people to help more people. I am a professional volunteer, and I am consumed by the mission to help empower people in communities around the world to live their best lives. But do you know what the really important part of that last statement was? And here's a clue. It wasn't about what I've done or about what I do. It was the word decision. The reason that word is important is because I wasn't always this person. In my teens, I had an epic battle with depression. I attempted suicide multiple times. At 19, I was in a catastrophic motorcycle accident in which I suffered 6 broken ribs, compound fractures of both of my femurs, and my heart stopped on 3 separate occasions. In my early 20s, I was in the grasp of a terrible drug addiction. I've stolen from people that I loved. I've started fights with people I didn't even know. And I've broken the law on more than one occasion. For a really long period in my life, I wasn't just a drain on society. I was a detriment to it. And here's a really unpopular opinion. Not everyone matters. I've often heard people say, and especially in self-help seminars and commencement addresses, that everyone matters and everyone is special. It's not true. Some people do not matter. Some people are users and consumers at best, sitting in the dark and dreary corners, offering nothing to the world. And at worst, others are thieves and murderers and politicians. Although, I guess sometimes politicians can be all of the above. But the point that I want to make here is, and I'm really, really sorry to be so blunt, but not everyone matters. And not everyone will be missed. It's a lie that we tell folks to numb the pain of insignificance, but it's a lie. And we need to stop saying it. But here's the truth, the glowing silver lining. I believe that everyone can matter. And the direction a person is heading may not lead to their destination. And if we want to live a life of significance, it all starts with making a decision to do so. Deciding to refuse to die an unlived life. The decision to make sure that it will matter we were ever even here. So, I would like you to write down these 3 questions. Take out your pen and paper. Hopefully you have that nearby and something that I've said and you're taking a little bit, paying attention and taking some notes. Question number 1. Will it matter I was ever even here? Will it matter I was ever even here? Question number 2 is, to whom? To whom will it matter? And question number 3 is, why? Why? We don't have time for you to get into answering these questions right now. Hopefully you'll take some time after my presentation to revisit these. But if your answer to question number 1 is yes, you're probably already on the path. You're probably already making an impact. You're probably already doing great things. But if your answer is no, I would like to remind you that if you have 2 legs and you're breathing, you can always change directions. If your answer is no, I would like to encourage you to make the decision to turn it into a yes. Because you see, about 2.5 years into my drug addiction, I was sitting on a park bench near my house. I was alone, ostracized, and destitute. And this was the place that I would go to remind myself that there was still some happy left in the world. There were always kids flying kites or playing soccer or fishing in one of the 2 ponds. There were usually families playing tag or hide and seek on one of the 2 playgrounds. But on this day, at 7-something o'clock on an August evening, there wasn't another soul around. I was alone and lonely, darkly depressed, and something spoke to me. It was a message that echoed and reverberated through every cell in my body. And it said, if you don't stop what you're doing, we're going to take it back. Something or someone or some council of beings made the decision not to allow me to die the day that I wrecked my motorcycle. And that gift was about to be rescinded, revoked. In that moment, I had a decision to make. Keep heading down the path that I was heading, though finite and terminal, or turn around and head a new direction. Obviously, I turned. But this is the same decision that we each get to make moment to moment, hour to hour. And it's the first step towards making a difference. Make the decision to make a difference. Step 2 is courage. Making a difference and enacting a positive change is difficult. It takes time. It takes a lot of energy and hard work. And often, it asks that we go against the grain, question the status quo, and buck the system. Making a positive change sometimes means violating social norms, and that risks us getting kicked out of the cave. And frankly, it can be scary as, you know. Maya Angelou once said that courage is the most important of all virtues because without courage, you cannot practice any of the other virtues consistently. It's also been said that the courageous may not live forever, but the cautious never live at all. Maya had it right. And courage is certainly the most important factor in making a difference. Invariably, when we set out to make a change, we will be confronted by fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of success, fear of losing friends and making enemies. The fears that we face will be consistent and persistent. And courage is the ability to take action in the face of such fears. After all, we can tell the size of a person by the obstacle that stops them. Now, I don't want to leave you hanging, though. I can't stop here. Okay, folks, fear is the problem. Courage is the answer. Good luck. Good night. So, how do we find, bolster, and build our courage muscle? For me, it's mostly been about faith. And not necessarily a faith in a higher power, although that can also be very helpful. But I'm talking about faith in ourselves. Faith in our abilities to learn, to undertake a new task, to grow and adapt, to face whatever adversities we may encounter. And for me, a divine and supreme faith in my ability to follow my intuition. I have an unshakable faith in my guidance, in the guidance that I perceive, and the belief that if we do the right things for the right reasons, we can't help but succeed. 12 years into running my brick and mortar custom furniture business, I awoke from a dream. My pillow was soaking wet and I was sobbing. In this dream, I was standing before a council of beings, and they asked, if all you do with your life is build furniture for other people, will you consider your life well spent? They weren't critical. There wasn't any judgment whatsoever. And if I'd been able to answer yes, they would have been delighted. Unfortunately, the answer was no. If all I ever did was build furniture for people, I personally would have considered my life wasted. I mean, nobody's life was ever changed because of a fancy new desk or a custom entertainment center or a new bed. Although a lot of lives have been changed in bed, it really wasn't the bed's doing or the person who built it. Now, I felt with all of my soul that I was meant to do more. I was saved to do more. I needed to do more. So I started the search. A couple years after that dream, I shut the doors to my furniture company, packed a backpack, and set out on a year-long journey around the world. I traveled through developing countries from Central America to Southeast Asia. I lived with host home families and integrated myself into their communities. In fact, this is where the dream for a world empowered came to be. But can you imagine? Can you imagine closing the doors to a business that you've run for 15 years? Imagine renting out a couple properties, packing a backpack, and flying 12,000 miles away to a country you don't even speak the language. For a lot of people, any one of those things would be terrifying enough to stay home. But something in my soul told me I had to go. My intuition had spoken to me, and I knew that my path to significance would be discovered on this trip. It was my faith and my intuition and my belief that I was meant to do something more impactful with my life that gave me the courage to walk away from my business, walk away from my family and my support system, and set out on this adventure. But none of that would have happened in the absence of courage. So, do you have the courage to follow your intuition the next time an opportunity to make a difference shows up? I'm going to give you 1 minute to write down some things that fuel your courage muscle. For me, it's my faith in my intuition and my belief that I'm meant to do something more important. But what are they for you? Write down just a couple things. I'm sorry that we don't have more time. I hope that, like the questions in the beginning, you'll come back to this. The third ingredient in this cake that we're baking is intention. Decide to set the intention to make a difference. It really is that simple. Every difference maker that ever walked the earth had one thing in common. They intended to make a difference. No positive change ever came about haphazardly or by accident. When I was working with my coach, Matt Shoup, I was given the task of writing a warrior credo. This was a mantra that was meant to express what I was willing to die for in the arena of life. And this is what I wrote. Today I fight to be a shining example of love, light, leadership, legacy, and lifestyle in the lives of everyone that I meet. Of course I stumble and I fall short of this all of the time. But I have set the intention to bring love and light to the lives of everyone that I meet. Do I fail? Of course. But I do try to practice this intention as often as I can. So starting today, I encourage you to set the intention to make a difference. Raise your hand and say after me, I set the intention to make a positive difference in somebody's life today. This brings me to the fourth and final step. Practice. Having a desire to make a difference doesn't make somebody a better person. Good intentions don't change the world. Changing our hearts to have good intentions may make us a better person, but the real magic happens when we put it to action. They say that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That means we can intend all that we want. But if we want to end up somewhere nice, we have to do something about it. After we make the decision and find the courage and set the intention to make a difference, now it's time to practice. And I do mean practice. It's about improvement, not perfection. Dennis Waitley says there never was a beginner. There never was a winner that wasn't a beginner. We're all going to slip and stumble and fall down. And sometimes we're going to take others with us in this process. The key is to fall with as much grace as possible. Bounce back as quickly as we can and try to practice again. We can't sit there on our knees bemoaning our failures and ruminating on our shortcomings. Because while we're down and we're beating ourselves up, we're missing our next shot. John Maxwell says the more time we spend regretting yesterday's mistakes, the further from today's opportunities we get. If we miss the mark, try again. Another opportunity to make a difference is but a moment away. And here's the most important thing I'd like you to remember. If you only recall one thing from this entire presentation, this is it. It's the little things that mean the most. So many people think that we have to become a mentor or donate $1 million or start a nonprofit to make a real difference in this world. It's not true. Of course you could do those things, and I encourage you to, if you feel so called. But if a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, the journey to a better world begins with a single smile. We can all begin right where we are to make a real difference. It's harder to quantify the little things, so we think that they're not as important. But how do we put a price on brightening somebody's day? I remember when I was out in LA working for Project Starting Human. I was building tiny homes for the homeless population of Skid Row and Compton. Elvis Summers and I worked our little butts off to build these amazing little mobile structures. After dropping off our latest build to a homeless man named Jim, who happened to be a veteran, I sat on the curb and struck up a conversation with a lady named Vicky. Vicky was in her 9th year of homelessness, living on the concrete in makeshift tents and cardboard shanties. She had 2 sisters, 2 daughters, and I think maybe 2 teeth. But Vicky and I sat there and we talked and we laughed and we cried on that curb for nearly an hour. And when it was time for me to leave, she started to bawl. She gave me the biggest hug and said something to me that brings tears to my eyes every time I think about it. She said, "Thank you for talking to me." I can't remember the last time somebody looked me in the eye and treated me like I was a person instead of trash. It turns out I delivered 2 gifts that day, and the biggest one wasn't a new house. So here's the moral. Join a nonprofit or start your own. Donate $1 million. That's all wonderful. Do it if you can. Do it if you're called. But while you're on the path to building great things, please don't forget your kids. Don't forget your partner, the checker at the grocery store. Have a conversation with somebody with whom you disagree with the intention of trying to understand. Leave a penny in the jar. Step over that insect on the footpath. Wave at your grumpy neighbor and mean it. Make the decision to set the intention, to have the courage to practice making somebody's day a little bit brighter. Because everyone can make a difference. In closing, I would like to invite you to join me. You can join me at A World Empowered to be a part of our family of people helping people who like helping people. We're always on the lookout for more difference makers just like you. I want to thank you. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you for being you. Thank you for making a difference.